All right, let's talk about Brett's video. So if you guys watch the pod, you know we're big fans of Brett. Brett is a NFL YouTuber, but not the traditional kind. And we'll touch on that in this video.
You weren't in here when we watched it in the office, like all of us last week.
Yeah, we watched
on this
it
TV.
on the road in Atlanta. So Brett essentially made a video at the NFL Combine, super high quality, and he touched on 5 things. And he said the future of YouTube is this. Tip number 1, audio. He said,
well, let's like kind of step back and kind of paint the picture of Brett. He's someone who's been like very involved with the NFL, had jobs at the NFL Network, is really, really good with a camera work. Most of his videos revolve around breaking down like the X's and O's of NFL teams and a lot of like draft prospect profile type stuff. But he has this itch for helping creators that are coming up, similar to us. And we've talked to him a ton about like the big content show and stuff within that, industry niche, whatever it is. And then, once a year, whatever, maybe a couple times a year, he makes these types of videos where he goes into like, here are things I wish I knew when I was younger. Here are things that like, if you're in this stage of your content creation career, you should know or are really important, or you should kind of like dive into. And that's what led him to making this video. And as always, like the camera work is flawless. The audio is flawless. The coloring is flawless. Like he's really good. He's really technically sound, and he's just a very like well-spoken creator.
So his first tip was make sure your audio is good before your video is good, which I thought was an interesting take, and I don't hate it. He probably talked to some psychological stuff and used some data too, which proved his point. Pretty much saying like the iPhone camera is going to be good enough for 99% of you guys, and if anything, splurge on a microphone early on and increase that audio.
It's funny because like when I started making videos first, I was in my room and I had like the camera probably 2 feet in front of me. Welcome back in the lab. Today I'm going to be doing something a little bit different. I'm not going to be getting into any numbers, analysis, any of that shit. And I didn't have a mic. I didn't have a mic for like 2 years when I first started making content. And I get comments all the time, like, fix your audio. Yeah. And I was always like, nah, don't worry about it kind of thing. And looking back on it, like, I cringe, of course. Because I think of the point he made, like, during that actual part of the video was really interesting because he was staring at the football field while the camera was looking at his head from behind. And you were still captivated by the scene and what he was saying. And he was like, I'm proving my point that like the actual video of me doesn't matter. And I think about a lot of TikTok clips of like people who do shit in public because their friend has to videotape them from like 100 feet away. Yeah. That quality is terrible. But the audio is so good that you don't really give a fuck. It's like whether it's like a guy approaching a girl in public or like, the dude who like goes up to like gang members and like does crazy shit like that just to see what happens to it. The video quality's awful, but you just kind of need to know what's going on as long as the audio is super clear. So I 1000% agree because you'll turn a video off immediately if the audio is shitty.
Right. Number 2, he said, focus on the intro. Intro is super, super important to a video. The intro needs to match the title and the thumbnail as well so that you're essentially building that trust right off the bat with them. Something that I want to just point out here, the intro needs to be like focused on probably way more than the rest of the video. Not that you should, give up on the second half of the video, but you got to keep people in and get them in. That doesn't mean you need to like throw a million things at their face and graphic this, graphic that. It just needs to be a quality intro that's going to either meet the intrigue of the title or create intrigue of what's going to come from the rest of the video. So
I'm really happy that the trend of like intros starting out with someone like screaming at you is starting to like slowly die down.
Yeah.
And it's always like these types of trends always fluctuate where it's like this is what works. Because I find myself as soon as someone's volume gets above like a 7, I'm like I'm gone here. But anytime it's like I've almost found that now I look for this. If I notice a trend, I'm like I'm consciously looking for it just because of the job that we're in. I'm like, oh, the most popular videos typically are just someone kind of like talking to you and making a really good point. I'm like, thank God that that's coming more normal again, because the other type of shit is, again, always like just tactic-y type stuff that will never hold itself out for the long run. And on intros, like we that was another thing that I started off not really ever thinking about. And now I do. On my individual YouTube videos, I make sure I say like what we're getting into immediately. And I don't start off with like a whole intro and like who am I and like personal fucking anecdotes. We'll get to that eventually if the video gets to it. And same thing with TikTok. We get like right into what we're doing. It's like today I need y'all to name the top 35 wide receivers. So I agree with the intro stuff.
I don't think that it wasn't in his 5, but that's an interesting point you make, because this video, if you were to look at Brett's channel, it highly underperforms the rest of his content, right?
Yeah.
Because it's something he's passionate about. It's something that he wanted to speak on. And you've sacrificed a little bit of that personal relationship with your fan base. Like there's pros and cons to it, right? And I think you put out enough content, you get the diehards who are going to watch through the rest of the video, but you also are going to attract someone who doesn't care about you. They just care about your rankings and you being an expert. So it's just stuff to value and to think about while you're creating stuff.
For sure. It comes down. Most people, I don't think, are really going to get to the point where like the stakes are that high where they're like, oh my God, my personal brand versus the monetary value of me. Sometimes I realize that the way that I've changed my intro, I'm like, I haven't even introduced myself. Like these people might not have never heard me say, because our channel name is bdge. Right. They might have never heard me say, my name's Nick in the last 70 videos I made. And I'm like, holy fuck. Like that's actually kind of crazy that these guys probably don't know what bdge stands for. Don't know that my name is Nick. Like I think about that sometimes. And it is a trade-off of, you know, whether you want to focus on like the views versus the personal branding versus all that kind of stuff. What I've found is a lot of the times the personal branding does take care of itself as long as like you are yourself over the long run.
Mm-hmm. His number 3 was value, but this is everything. If you've ever listened to an episode, this comes up.
Okay.
I was saying number 3
I'm bike, baby. I'm fucking back.
But yeah, the value. Are you adding value to your viewer, right? Like if that is not in some way, if there's zero value creation, no one's watching your video. Like people have to be coming in for a reason and provide them immense
Let's dive a little bit deeper into this, because I think this is like one of those points where this comes naturally to great creators and it's like a flat line for people that don't understand it. Creating value, it's like, what does that fucking mean for a lot of people? The more I've thought about it, I've always come from like a creator, like a teacher or like a professor-ish role when it comes to my content creation. So when I think about it, I'm thinking about, I'm doing enough research that the normal person will just not know what I'm talking about unless I taught it to them. I want them to leave the video having a new opinion on something or having swayed their opinion on something that they felt strongly about. I want them to learn something that they didn't know before they came into the video. So when I think about that, that's value to me. If I go into a video and the person taught me about a topic that I was unaware of, or like I had an opinion about this person or this team or this whatever, and this person just swayed me to the opposite side, I'm like, that was valuable. That opened my eyes a little bit. And of course, there's other forms of value. There's information, there's the entertainment, there's the motivation, whatever kind of value it comes in. With you guys are much more like entertainment focused. So how do you think about, do you like consciously sit down before making, because I know you guys are very organized with like, this is the trip we're gonna make, like this is the packaging we should think about. Do you guys sit down and say to yourselves, like, what is the value that we're giving the audience, and like how do we portray that throughout the content?
Yeah, so we're adding value to our next set of videos, which is giving an insight. So 3 things. 1, entertainment. So we want to be entertaining, but we really want people to come to the game with us and feel like they're at the game with us. So that's number 1, mix of entertainment. 2 is a lot of like exclusivity or just opportunities that, you know, the normal person isn't going to have. So they're not going to be able to see those things unless they see it through us. And then 3rd is now we're making an addition, which is going to be like the extreme value, like if we get to the core of like an actual value play. So at the end of every experience, we're going to sit down in almost like a very short modified podcast version and rate and rank everything. We're then going to create a Google sheet that will be view only for our followers, and they'll be able to come in and see every aspect of every experience we go to, and it will create this mega list.
How are you gonna section it off?
So we'll have 4 categories, which will be food, atmosphere, and then there'll be like unique will be a category. So like at a Braves game, you can go down the slide, like how cool was that, scale of 1 to 10. I'm trying to think like what the bleachers at Wrigley, like that's a little unique. Like what's that like? And then the 4th will be like stadium, city, something around like the game around the game. And then we'll have these other categories, gameplay if it applies, and then we'll add notes to it too. Like we might rate the 7 out of 10 food, but like we want to add a note of what we ate and like which one was actually good, which was bad. And then we want to create this like crazy list of what's the best experience in sports. So if you are a sports fan, and then it should dial down into like NFL, right? Like, all right, you're a Falcons fan. Falcons schedule comes out.
Sorry,
you're like, I want to see one away game, right, this season. Where should I go? You hit our list. And it's like, oh, wow. I didn't realize they thought going to a Packers game is a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity. Like, let's make sure we go there. Or it's like the Vikings game is actually the best bang for your buck, and I should hit that one. So
that's pretty cool.
Yeah,
that's like it's like when you visit another country or whatever, and they sell the guy, like the travel guides to the country.
Yeah, we want to be travel
the
guide
ultimate
for
like sports
sport.
guy. That's pretty cool.
And we're trying to hit it all. So that is like our addition.
That's like informational value. That's organizational value for sure. That saves people a lot of time rather than having to try to figure that out.
And it's not going to be possible to. It's going to be very hard to like fully encapsulate every single. Like we can't say what hotel to stay at every single time. But in theory, you can then scale and like give other people the opportunity to go and take our framework.
I mean,
and create right.
It's not that different than like Prez's One Bite. Right, like he started by just giving scores. He can't rate every pizza in New York. They make an app, and now there's user submitted ones where they start to they consume the content so much to the point that they know like where they should be rating things. Right, like if you were just like, hey, we're doing a pizza rating app that had nothing to do with Prez, so many of the scores would be like 9.5s, 10s, 10s, but they know because they've watched so much content that like you're getting a 9.3, you're talking about some of the best pizza in the entire world, so they kind of rate accordingly.
And we've always rated stuff along the way, but we just kind of did it, and
without any organization. And
then
that's like the difference I feel like between like companies and just lawless creators. Like that's the difference between a different level of success is putting so much conscious thought behind the organization of the things that you do.
I don't know if it's the reason why our Snapback Thursday video got 150,000 views on YouTube, but Casey and I, for the first time ever, like we sat down and we debated and we tiered and we ranked and we're like, oh, the food there was versus like just being at a game being like, oh, that's a 7.2.
Right.
But like based off what? Right.
People need structure. That's just human behavior, bro. They need to be told that it fits into this category or this label so that they can compare it to other things.
Yeah. So
it's important.
Yeah, we're going to do, I mean, we've got baseball games, basketball games, and then a ton of football games coming up, and then we'll continue to go to more sporting events. So, yeah, that's like our thought on value, and as Brett, getting back to Brett, as he said, adding value is super helpful to people.
Yeah, and the 4th point, yourself is enough, kind of goes back to just like when you do it for yourself, you're doing it from a point of your own thoughts and your own imagination and your own creation. So you will inherently put out things that are innovative that no one else can do or think of. They could do it or think of it, but when you really dive into like what inspires you, it'll always have your flavor on it.
The point he made that I so connected with, because we've gone down like this YouTube Mr. Beastification thing, is if you don't think there's enough people out there who will tune in just because you're not the loudest in the room, the funniest in the room, the most entertaining in the room, whatever it may be, like it's crazy to think, but there is that amount of people for you. Like 500,000 people are subscribed to Brett, and it's like in-depth film breakdowns, right?
Yeah.
Like stuff that, originally you might have said, how am I going to find 10,000 people to watch this? And 500,000 people are watching it. There is an audience for everything. I think of, I watched that movie with the guy who had the GameStop stock. Like, he wasn't entertaining, but like
I wanted to watch that, but I was like, the trailer looks so bad.
People hated it. I thought it was pretty good. It was interesting. But like, there just is an audience for that. And if you're like looking at TikTok, you're like, optimize hook. It's got to be this type of content, clickbaity. It's got to be, this rash stuff. Like, there are opportunities.
You just have to like speak what you feel and what you really think. And it actually brings me back to sometimes like when I'm doing research for like fantasy videos, sometimes I find myself being like, yeah, you should draft this guy over this guy. And then I'll be in a draft and I'll be like, that's not actually how I feel. Right. Like, why am I saying the other way around, And I think a lot of people get caught up with content about how they should be saying things, and it's like, if you just breathe for a sec and be like, how do I actually feel? Like, what is my point of view on this? And you get that out there, it'll come off really smoothly. And like, that is the pure way of creating content that I think a lot of you guys will have success with.
The last one I think is funny because Nick set up Brett's profile with how high tech his video and audio and all this stuff is, and his point was, like, you will get better over time. Your thumbnails will get better over time. Your content creation will get better over time. Your scripting, your production, your video editing, your photo, literally everything will get better over time. And this is a problem that we all have, right? We wish we had the best camera. We wish we had the best audio. We wish, right? That was point one, get your audio up. But, like, you will get there. It just comes from the reps. And that's why, the start of the show, I mentioned, like, can you do this for 3 years, not make $1? Because if you can't, then you might not actually get there. Like, you just need time.
Yeah, and it's all a little bit like self-fulfilling in a sense, right? Like, you'll get better over time. It doesn't mean you will necessarily get better at all these skills over time. For instance, I've gotten a million times better at like making thumbnails and designs and graphics because I actually genuinely enjoy doing it. So I invest a lot of time, and it's not time that I'm like, oh, fuck. Sometimes I have a lot to do, so I'm like, I don't want to do it. But like, when I have time to rip off some designs or whatever, I enjoy doing it. But like, even from your sense, like, maybe you will never make a thumbnail, but you enjoy like running the business, and like finding someone who can make thumbnails for you is also a skill. Like, the outsourcing is a skill, and putting the right people in place is a skill. And you eventually like sharpen the things that you are really good at, which again, like, kind of self-fulfills the rest of it. So it's all encompassing in a sense. You won't get better at everything, but you'll get better at the things that are necessary for you to get better at to survive.
So that's Brett's video. We will link it down below. Maybe we can pop it up on the screen, and I would suggest checking it out. He wrote The Future of Sports Media. It was really like hyper-focused, I felt, on YouTube, which is fine. That's his domain. But I think like he also did a video at some point last year that was actually about sports media as a whole. So just there are 2 videos that you guys can
I'm
check
surprised. I haven't checked. Have you looked at Brett's TikTok in a while? Me either. I haven't checked it. And I remember when he would put out videos like a year or 2 years ago, some of them would go like super crazy on TikTok. And I feel like he should have just found someone who's really good at condensing his YouTube videos into TikToks, because
he hasn't posted one since 2023.
Yeah, people eat that kind of shit up on there. Like, people who just like break down film.
Yeah.
And he's done it better on there than I've seen in a lot of other places, but it's another talking point.